If I found so much peace and so much self-love when I started to heal, when you know what it feels like to live in pain and then to feel that self-love, it's a feeling you want to share with the world. How can we become the teacher if we haven't learned the lessons? How can you be the healer if you haven't gone through the pain? Boy, if there's one thing I've learned, we cannot force people to heal. If they are not ready, they are not ready. And we can't tell them to be ready. Only we decide when we're ready. We stop being the victim and we start being the victor. Broken people raise broken people, period. Unless you've healed your own trauma, then broken people raise broken people. Even when they try to go in the opposite direction, we're never too old or too far gone to heal. And even though healing is messy work and it's all encompassing, I cannot stress enough how peaceful it is to feel grounded and to not be controlled by my triggers anymore.
Stories and Stanza is a podcast exploring creativity, resilience, and the transformative power of human stories. Through our two series, Between the Lines with creators and Fail With Me focusing on wellness and life's challenges, we bring you authentic conversations with inspiring voices from around the world. If you are drawn to meaningful dialogue that both comforts and challenges, follow us on YouTube or any podcast platform. Hello everyone and welcome to a new episode of Stories and Stanza. And today I have Tina Djuretic as guest speaker on the show. Hi Tina, welcome to the discussion. How are you doing today?
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm doing it excellent. How about yourself?
Yeah, I'm doing good. It's slightly cold. We are going into summer, but we had a few rainy and stormy days and it just cooled down Melbourne a little bit more. So a tad bit cold, but I had a very busy week and looking forward to recording this episode with you. So for anyone who has joined us for the first time, I'd like to say that in Stories and Stanza, we speak to writers and we also look into wellness, psychology, resilience side of things. So we have two different segments: Between the Lines, which is with the writers, and Fail With Me, which is with different speakers about their wellness story. And today I feel that we have a perfect bridge between the two slightly different worlds. And I look forward to unpacking this with Tina, and we will talk about her book, Lost in the Overwhelm. So congratulations for this is your second book. So for our audience, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So I'm on the opposite side of the world, coming out of summer and going right into fall. It's also rainy here. I'm in Vancouver. And please excuse me, I have a bit of a cold, but I wanted to show up today. As we said, as you and I talked about pre-show, sometimes we're not perfect, but it's important we still show up and show that we don't always have to be perfect, right? So I am an author of two different books. My first one came out last year. It's called Finding My Sovereignty, and it's a memoir. It's my story. I found myself in a pattern of very toxic relationships, and I couldn't understand why this was happening when I was such a logical person and was always working on myself and learning from my relationships, and yet I still had this through line of narcissism. And I finally realized with the last partner that my parents are narcissists as well. So I was simply repeating my childhood pattern and something that I had buried. I didn't really remember childhood. So the pattern was confusing because if you don't even remember it, you don't know why it's there. So anyways, this sent me on a healing journey. I started to unpack childhood, unpack my relationships, understand my patterns, and then I started to heal them. And as I did that, I was taking notes because I had no idea what I was doing. It was 2020. COVID had just hit the world. The world had shut down. I lost my job. I was like living by myself, really isolated, and then just going through all of this big trauma that I was working through. So I didn't know who to turn to for help. And I couldn't afford to go to a therapist or even to do Reiki or any of the modalities that I knew about. So for the first time in my life, I went to YouTube and I just, meditated and just sort of said to spirit, like, I need help. I don't know what I'm doing. So please show me. And the right teachers showed up, the right podcasters, the right everything to help me on my journey. And it's been a 5-year process so far, right? We're 2025. And I know that healing never stops, but I have certainly done a lot of deep healing. And so when I wrote Lost in the Overwhelm, it's more of a practical, hands on workbook with journaling prompts and lessons and things like that. If I found so much peace and so much self love when I started to heal, when you know what it feels like to live in pain and then to feel that self love, it's a feeling you want to share with the world. And so I put pen to paper once again, so to speak, or fingers to keypad, if you will. And and I took all the lessons that I learned and I put them into this workbook called Lost in the Overwhelm.
That is amazing. And the story behind this podcast is also something very similar. Like, I had a very difficult period. Both me and my wife, we went through a difficult period. And in that phase, I didn't know what was right and what was wrong. I felt that everything I'm trying is not working out. So when I slowly started my healing journey, and it started from a somatic workshop, and it started understanding things very differently. And when things got better, I felt that I need to talk about it. And I don't need to talk about success. I need not talk about success in terms of materialistic gain. I need to talk about the inner core, the human journey, the world of imperfection, which is why I absolutely love the idea behind your book. And the podcast started, and I think, I believe, let's say, that when you have that energy, you attract energies in the similar realm. You attract the right people, and then the ideas join and grow, and it reach more people. So I believe that the difficult period we have gone through in our lives, if we talk about it, if we open up about it, if we be objective about it, then there is so much to learn.
Absolutely. How can we become the teacher if we haven't learned the lessons? How can you be the healer if you haven't gone through the pain, right? Sometimes the people with the big missions, or it doesn't have to be a big mission. What you're doing, what I'm doing, these are our missions, right? And we find each other, like you said, we help each other and we help people who need it. We were those people. We know what that feels like. And we know how valuable it is when someone shows us the way, you know.
Absolutely. And I am really thankful to all my amazing guests. And I've not created a community per se, but it has an unwritten community. And a lot of my guests say that, okay, we have talked about this. Can I come back and talk about something else? And that's how it grows. Many of my guests have come back to the show because they enjoyed the experience and they felt that they can come back again and talk about it.
That's nice. That's good.
I'm really thankful to everyone. So let's start talking about your book. So first, tell our audience who the book is for and what is the core message that you are trying to convey through your writing.
I think that all of us, some of us might hide it better or ignore it better, but I think all of us have some form of childhood trauma. Sometimes we look at trauma and we only think of the big things, abuse or abandonment or, those things. But sometimes it's as simple as both mom and dad worked because they didn't have any money, and they would loved you, but they just didn't have the capacity to be there because they had to work. Well, that's a bit of trauma, right? Because we need our parents. So it's all of those things. Or let's say a parent died when you were a child. They didn't do anything bad to you, but maybe you were the oldest child and now you had to step up and help raise your siblings because one parent couldn't do it alone. That's still trauma because you weren't allowed to be a child. You were forced into being an adult. So we all, in my opinion, have some form of trauma. So therefore, this book is for everyone. But I wrote it for those that are ready to heal. Boy, if there's one thing I've learned, we cannot force people to heal. If they are not ready, they are not ready. And we can't tell them to be ready. Only we decide when we're ready. I'm Gen X, so I, of course, relate very well to Gen X. I think we had our own trauma in the way that, well, our parents, we were the first generation of latchkey kids, weren't we? So we raised ourselves almost. That came with a lot of trauma as well, but it also came with this mask of, because we raised ourselves, because we learned everything ourselves, we're super tough. And we never allowed ourselves to go, no, we're traumatized. No, we're just tough. Because I spent my whole life being tough, right? I also think people who come from trauma sometimes put on the air of toughness, or people even say to you, oh, well, the things that you went through made you stronger. And we go, yeah, I like that. It made me stronger. That's what I'm going to run with that. But did it make me stronger? Yeah, I'm a strong person, but I was still broken and hurting inside. So strong on the outside, maybe, but my inner child was still just wanting to be loved because I never had that. No one ever wanted me. No one ever loved me. I sought that in my relationships. And so what did I end up doing? Dating men who didn't want me and didn't love me because that was my pattern. That's what I knew. And that is almost, I'd say addiction, but it's the frequency that's in your body. You were talking about vibrations, high vibrations and low vibrations. The more pain that we're carrying, the more sorrow, the trauma. We're in a low vibration. When we're so full of love, we're in this high vibration. We attract people that match our vibration. So when we're very broken or very traumatized or not dealing with our pain, we're all going to attract those people into our lives because that's our frequency. But the beauty of that is that means that we have control and we can fix it and we can change it. We stop being the victim and we start being the victor. So that was a super long-winded and all over the place answer. I'm just saying that this book is for anybody. But I would certainly say, I think women will relate just because women tend to already know that they have a lot of trauma in their lives. And yeah, but it is for anyone.
You said something beautiful, that the book is for anyone who is ready to heal. And I'd just like to talk a little bit more around that, because I've seen people coming up and, saying that we want to heal, but they are not ready to heal. And because I run this podcast, I get all sorts of queries. Okay. And I have, as I told you, that I learned to be curious and objective about whatever we are labeling as failure, be that mental health, be that physical health, be that, professional work environment, relationships, parenting, wherever that falls, started understanding things differently. So people come to me with queries, and I say that you try to follow this conversation, maybe try to see what this guest has said, or on this topic we have made some discussions, and you can follow that. And then I realized that they're not open to that suggestion. They have not opened their mind to the possibility that they can overcome anger, let's say, or frustration, or burnout for that matter. So
Yeah.
that ready to heal is the crux, I think, for anyone to open their mind to possibilities. Do you feel that same way?
I think, though, just because you're ready doesn't mean you won't hit resistance, because you can be ready. If you're saying, I'm ready, I want to heal, well, then you are, because you're saying it and you're already signaling to your soul that you're ready to heal. And your soul is like, oh, thank God, now I can finally step in and help you. But that doesn't mean that people won't resist the things along the way. I find one of the biggest resistances, the wall that we're going to hit, that anyone hits, even myself working on my own healing, is forgiveness. It's easy to forgive the little things, especially if a lot of time has passed and that thing didn't have a profound effect on you. But the heinous acts, the big acts that are not forgivable, well, we still have to forgive those. So that is often a wall that people are going to hit where maybe they aren't ready. So when I was writing my book and I sent it off to my editor, she sent it back to me with a note saying on the section of forgiveness, and she said, Tina, I want you to reword this. I want you to go back and I want you to work on this because you're going to hit resistance with this. And she said, although I agree with you that we cannot heal without forgiving the acts that have happened to us, she said it's like a person going into a therapist's room. If they're going to therapy, I mean, unless it's court mandated, then you're going there because you're volunteering to go there, right? So you go to see a therapist, but the therapist says something to you that you aren't ready to hear it. And so what do? You go right back to inner child, right? We act like a child when we're upset. So we go, you don't know me. How dare you tell me I have to do that? You don't know me. And we storm out, right? And we storm out of the office. We don't come back for 2 weeks because we're so mad. But on the third week, we come back and we sit down and very sheepishly we say, all right, you were right. Tell me more. Right? So as teachers and healers, it's not for us to judge the other person. That doesn't mean they're not ready to heal. They might not be ready for that thing right there just yet. But give them the time then. And only they can decide how much time. And if they never come back to your office, that's on them too. We cannot force people to heal. You must want it for yourself.
That is so very true. So very true. And in your book, you have unpacked a number of patterns, right? And
Yeah.
we will, I think, the healing, it kind of we need to understand what we need to heal within ourselves and what is being passed on from one generation to other. I'll share a very interesting story here. Okay. So I remember my father never wanted me to drive. Okay. And then I kind of fought him to do that. And I have met with an accident when I was much younger. Okay. Then when my brother went to learn driving, he said, it's taking me a long time. I mean, I am good at other things, but I'm so slow in driving and just learning that. And then we started talking about this, okay? And then we went back to our mom and we asked her as well. So it turns out that my dad, when he was younger, he witnessed an accident in which somebody died. And then after that, he got afraid of driving and he gradually stopped. And then he passed on that fear onto me and onto my brother. And we inherited that. We just didn't know. We got to know in our 40s that my dad witnessed an accident and my dad isn't alive. So it's no way of asking him that why did you do this?
Yeah.
But for a long time, I questioned why would somebody say that do not drive? What's wrong with that? And
Yeah.
Then my brother asking me the same question. And then I had no answer. It's just that, I found through different conversations that this happened maybe 50, 60 years ago. And then we have the effect of that incident, that trauma in our lives. I'm curious to hear from you as to what are some of the patterns that you talk about and how we can identify, how do we heal from that?
Well, so I mean, generational trauma is, oh gosh, a subject all on its own, isn't it? Because there's so many facets to it. When we go to the doctors, for example, and they ask us which diseases have been passed down our bloodline, we go, oh, cancer, heart disease, you know, diabetes. We have a list that we know from our families. And yet nobody ever says what generational trauma is being passed down the line, because it is being passed down through the blood exactly the same way disease is being. So if there is racism in your family, even if it goes 4 generations ago and your parents weren't racist, it's still being passed down the line. That was something I had to heal, and I am not a racist person. And yet I went, you know what? I see some racism in great grandparents. I'm going to work on that just because I don't want any part of it. Right. So sometimes it's like, I'll just deal with that just in case. But there is also huge ones will be religious mindsets. There are so many restrictions when it comes to organized religion. Poverty mindset, huge one in my family on both sides. Poverty mindset. It didn't seem to matter what I did, I just couldn't get ahead. And then, of course, you believe that's what you deserve, and then you'll never get ahead because unless you change that frequency again, this is what you're attracting. There was a lot of religion in my family, so religious beliefs were passed down, restrictions of religion, and physical abuse was passed down on both sides of my family, to the point where I went, yeah, I'm never having children. The buck stops here. I will never abuse anyone in my life. I was so afraid of becoming them that for me, the only way out was not to have children. And that was the path that I chose. Mental illness. I mean, okay, this is a mental illness, but it is also on a spiritual level because, mental illnesses come with so much darkness sometimes. These are some generational traumas that can happen. Alcoholism, any kind of addiction. Broken people raise broken people, period. Unless you've healed your own trauma, then broken people raise broken people. Even when they try to go in the opposite direction, I will never be like my parents, right? I will do the opposite. We still create trauma, just in the opposite way. We just created a new trauma because you cannot escape this law of attraction or this law of karma or this law of repeating generational trauma until you heal it. Don't get me wrong. You heal it, you don't repeat it anymore, but you got to heal it first. But the beauty of that is also, that means when I'm healing myself and working on myself, I'm working on all of my family too. I am healing my entire bloodline. And that is beautiful. And it's my responsibility, nobody else's.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because a lot of times these things get passed on because we are not aware. Mm-hmm. So, just going back to the same story, my father had his unresolved trauma from that accident. He didn't work on that. Instead, he passed it on to us. And when it comes to my daughter, I tell her that do everything you want. I may be afraid to try something, but I'm not going to pass it on to you. Yes. Whether you want to be religious, you want to do this, you take a call whether you want to do this or not, and you put your sincere efforts to it. She is very creative and she wants to write and paint and all of that. And I say that don't let my thinking stop you. You
Mhm.
open up your mind to the possibilities that you want to explore. Let
Absolutely.
not this be guided by whatever my beliefs are, whatever my generational practices are. Not let's that break that here. Whatever has
Yes.
happened, let's break that here, and you be your own person. Then you choose what you want to follow, what you don't want to follow, how you
Yeah.
relate to the family. I think this awareness is gradually building as well. It was impossible to think of maybe 30, 40 years ago.
For sure. I can say that my parents were narcissists, but I promise you, I didn't even know that word till 10 years ago. So growing up, how could I have pinpointed what was happening when I didn't have words for it? We have come such a long way with talking about things, educating ourselves on things. You can freely go to YouTube now or any of these channels and hear about all of these subjects, but as well, that veil on our third eye has been slowly lifting, hasn't it? So our children that are born after 2012, their eyes are open. And I mean like third eye open. So they're calling things out that we would never have called out because first of all, we couldn't have called them out. But they're in a place now where they know what gaslighting means. They know what narcissism means. They know what a bully, like to call out bullying. None of that happened when I was a kid. No way. That was the norm. And there were no words for it. Maybe bullies. Sure, we knew what a bully was, but not all the other stuff, right? So I think it's beautiful. I think we judge our young people too much for being too like, they talk about everything. But whenever there's a big pendulum shift in life, it's a big swing, right? Eventually we're going to find the balance and the pendulum will stop swinging until it stands still, right? So we're in the big swing right now.
Absolutely spot on. We are talking about narcissism, and I would love to unpack that a little bit more in terms of, and this has come up a lot in this podcast, is
I'm sure.
ego and self-awareness, two opposite poles of identity, and
Mhm.
somewhere in the middle is that narcissism. If you are trapped by that ego, then you have that mirror of narcissism, and it has certain generational elements, of course, because nobody said that was wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
Nobody said that was wrong. So I want to hear from you as to where do you think, let's unpack what is narcissism and how that impacts relationships, and then we'll talk about how we identify it and how we interrupt it and how we come out of that shell.
Oof, narcissism. There are people who are selfish. That doesn't make them narcissists, right? We've gone a little too far with the narcissism word as well. We've forgotten that there actually is a definition to it. I don't know the exact definition. That's not what I mean. But what I mean is every single person we break up with just because they were selfish doesn't make them a narcissist. The difference with the narcissist is the lack of empathy for anyone else. It's sociopathic behavior. It's where I am intentionally, very purposefully manipulating you to get what I want, and I have zero feeling for you. That is the difference, right? So there's selfish people, there's manipulative people. The narcissist is going to combine those two. And if we're looking at it on a spiritual level, it is an incredibly overbalanced, solar plexus chakra. So many of us have an underdeveloped sense of our own power, but a narcissist has a way overdeveloped sense of their own power. But it's also, I will crush you to get what I want. And it also gives me pleasure to crush you because I'm so insecure in reality, I'm so insecure on the inside that the only way I derive pleasure is by hurting other people. That's narcissism in my world. Maybe not a textbook definition, but it is my experience.
And how do we, there are two parts of it as well. Like someone who is narcissist, they need to understand where they stand and they need to expand they need to work on themselves. There's a lot of work. And then when you are affected by narcissistic behavior, then what do you do?
Ooh. Well, if you're attracting narcissists into your life, then you're me. You're the previous me, right? That was one of the reasons I wrote the memoir, was because I wanted to have like almost a case study of like, here's what childhood was. Oh no, we're going to bury that. We're going to let go of that so that we can be a happy person, because I was always a happy person, a really positive human being. But boy, I keep dating these really lousy patterns. What's going on here? Why is this happening? So, and then to the realization and then to the healing of it. So I wrote that for that reason, but I totally just forgot your question. Can you ask it to me again? Oh, the other side of it. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, I do that sometimes. The other side is that, so I am an empath myself. And I think a lot of people that are in a pattern of dating narcissists are empaths. They might not know it, but empaths are the people that feel everything, right? We feel everything. And it can be very confusing because I can walk into a room of people and I feel everything they're feeling. And it's so powerful, it overrides my own feelings. So what that often means is that when I'm in a relationship with a narcissist, for example, I'm just going to use my mother, okay? My mother, overt narcissist. She was brutally, verbally abusive, mentally abusive, psychologically abusive. Like, she was the ultimate game player. But she's bipolar and physically abusive. So she would go weeks beating, manipulating, breaking things, breaking bones, doing what she does. But then she'd go into the depression part of the bipolar and she'd lock herself in her room for weeks at a time. Well, my sisters would be like, oh, thank God, if she's locked in her room, at least she can't beat us. But I could feel her pain. It was all I could feel. So I would be the one who would make a cup of tea and sneak into her room and be like, are you okay? Like, here's some tea. Do you need a hug? To my abuser. Because I could feel, not just, I knew she was in pain. I felt her pain. All I could feel was pain. So how confusing is that when 1 minute the person's beating you and the next minute you feel their severe pain and you can't help but want to fix them. We're the fixers, right? Nurses, half the nurses, doctors are not narcissists, sorry, empaths, right? Because they want to heal. They want to heal. So of course now I go out into the world. Well, I'm a healer, aren't I? I'm a help people. I'm a keep the peace, because when you come from trauma, you also want to keep the peace. So of course, a narcissist only has to spend 10 seconds with me to know that I'm an empath. I'm the perfect victim for them. And that is why they chose me every time. Is because they knew that I would override my own feelings of you're hurting me to, no, I need to make this relationship work. And also I need him to be happy. And if he's happy, maybe he won't hurt me. It's a very confusing place to be. But if you are always waiting for the other shoe to drop, if you are always on alert because you don't know who's coming home, is it going to be Jekyll or Hyde? If you're always trying to keep the peace, you are already in a narcissistic relationship or a bad relationship. You should not be having to keep the peace. That's not your job. The peace should be there. And that is the lesson that I had to learn.
Amazing.
The hard way.
And you talked about, identifying these behaviors and these patterns. And let's say someone who is a narcissist, someone is too self-absorbed. then, but if they want, and in a lot of cases, they have unresolved trauma that
Oh, for sure.
they're not aware of. How do they come out of it?
Well, a narcissist goes through healing the same way anyone else does, don't they? But they have to be willing to heal. The problem with narcissists is they don't think there's anything wrong with them. They think they're perfect. But if a narcissist is ready to heal, they're going to go through the exact same healing process that anyone else does. Again, their biggest issue. So, okay, we understand the chakras are our energy centers, and our center of power is underdeveloped if we're attracting the narcissist into our life. Meaning, you don't have strong boundaries. You probably don't have any boundaries, right? I didn't have any boundaries. No, that's not even true. I had strong boundaries with strangers. I don't know. You don't get to talk to me like that. Medium boundaries with friends. No boundaries with lovers, partners, boyfriends, whatever you want to call them. So there was actually a difference, right? So when I started to heal, well, now that I love myself, I simply won't tolerate you treating me like that. So boundaries. Okay, so that's what the person who has none needs to learn. The person who's a narcissist who is too much in their power, meaning I'm God, I am the best thing ever, and all of you should just bow to my whim. Well, what they actually need to do is shrink that chakra. It's so big that it's become a black vortex, and the heart chakra is above it, and oh gosh, it just left me. Solar plexus, and what's the next one? Sacral chakra is below it. But that vortex is so big that it's sucking anything from the heart or from the sacral right into your power center, and it's just being sucked right in. So how can I feel with my heart when everything coming out of my heart is actually being sucked into the black hole that is way too big, way too open? It needs to be shrunk. It needs to be brought down to proper size. So one's overdeveloped, one's underdeveloped. Same problem, different side of the problem. But you see how they find each other?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. Interesting. Yes.
Yeah.
And you talked about boundaries. I think that on its own is a wonderful topic to expand. But for our discussion, I would like to hear your thoughts around it from what we have observed or unpicked, that, a lot of times we lower our boundaries just to get accepted. And that comes from low self-esteem or whatever you want to call it. And then how important it is to exercise healthy boundaries. How do we work on that? What are your thoughts?
So I find, and this is a broad statement, but I still think it's true, women are always going to struggle a little bit more with boundaries than men are, because just the way we're born into this world, we are still in a patriarchy. So men are constantly empowered from the moment they come out of the womb, right? And they also have this wonderful get out of jail free card, and it's called boys will be boys. No matter what they do, no matter how they misbehave, no matter what age they are, people go, oh, boys will be boys. Women don't get that. Women are taught that if our hair isn't perfect, our makeup isn't perfect, our body isn't perfect, we're not the perfect wife, the perfect mother, the perfect lover, the perfect everything, then we aren't perfect. And perfect is the only goal. Good God, the pressure put on us from the time we're young children is crazy. So we lack boundaries because men get away with murder and we don't. And so we already are being taught this lesson, right? So then we become mothers and wives. Not only do our husbands mistreat us, maybe just with not appreciating how much work we do around the house, or you've got it so easy. I'm the one who goes to work and makes the money. All you got to do is stay home and be with the kids. Great. I'd like to see you try it sometime. Or children misabusing their parents because, they don't appreciate everything the mother does. And women just take it. We constantly compare ourselves with other women. So it's tough. So putting down boundaries is not easy if you've never done it, because it makes you feel selfish because that's what you're told. If you put yourself first, you're selfish. Okay. So the narcissist is the only person who ever puts themselves first. Do you know what I'm saying? And yet it's actually not true. There's this balance of putting yourself first, but not becoming so selfish. If my cup is full because I put myself first and I make sure my energy level and my love and my self-care is up here, I have so much to give everyone else. But if I'm only ever giving to anyone else and I let my cup deplete, how can I give? I can't. So my boundaries are the way people talk to me, the way people treat me, the way my boss treats me. Boy, that trickles into everything. I won't be tolerated like that at work or anywhere. And boundaries show that you have self-love. A lack of boundaries shows that you lack self-love. Our relationships reflect how we think about ourselves. If those men I dated weren't treating me well, that's how I saw myself. Deep inside, that's what I thought I was worth, and that's why I tolerated it. Now, trying to put up boundaries, woof, boy, that takes some time. First, you need to start healing before the boundaries come, because you need to start finding your self-worth first. Then the boundaries will come. I also feel like sometimes these steps are so monumental and so huge and so foreign to us that we just go, I can't do that. So one of the things I did in my book in several chapters was build a bridge. If you can't get there, make 20 small steps to get there. Build a bridge to boundaries. Start by saying no to little things. Would you like an extra cup of tea? No. It's so little, but I said no. I'm practicing saying no, right? Like, it's those little things that we can do to start building a bridge. Build a bridge to forgiveness. Build a bridge to meditation, because meditating's hard for people who don't meditate. So we don't have to get there immediately. We need to give ourselves a little bit of grace when it comes to, if I spent 50 years of my life doing my life one way and now I'm trying to change, it's not going to happen in 5 minutes. I'm going to build a bridge to get there. We do anything for 30 days and we cement it. So do it for 30 days and then do the next step for 30 days and the next step, if that's what it takes. You'll get there.
Spot on. We are talking about forgiveness and self-compassion, and I think that's a very misunderstood area, because when we hit the challenging periods in our lives, or when we encounter trauma, then the natural instinct or natural coping mechanism is working harder, be harder, or put that brute force algorithm. I look back at myself a couple of years ago when I was having this difficult period. My wife had some mental health challenges. I was not doing very well at work, and I was too hard on myself.
Yeah.
And I felt that I need to work harder. I need to be harder. And in that process, I completely burned myself out. And and then I realized, so this is what is happening. I am sometimes trying to harden myself. And
we are our own worst critics, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So you are talking about forgiving, and I think that forgiving comes to ourselves as well. Like, sometimes we need to forgive ourselves that this happened, which is basically the theme that I'm trying to explore in the Fail With Me segment. I say fail with me doesn't mean that I want you to fail. I'm saying that I failed and I looked at what I was labeling as failures. So this is what it is. It's neither to feel ashamed, or neither feel self-sabotaged or burnt out, any of that. And we have talked about a number of behavioral aspects and talked about how you unpack that your book, and I really like how you brought in all the examples, and you are a fantastic speaker. So
thank you.
to round up the discussion, to see bringing this to a conclusion, I've seen that a lot of times we get bitter because we are not resolving that. We are too hard on ourselves.
Yes.
So that's the crux of healing, that how you talked about the bridge. Yes. So taking
Yeah.
small steps. And
Yes.
then what? What's your view on healing? How do you perceive it? And I'll say something very interesting that one of my guests suggested. He's a journaling coach. And he
Hmm.
said, think about healing as exercising, not as going to doctor. It's not like you go to the doctor and you heal. It's not like that. You have to work on it. There's no easy path. It's a messy path that you need to take towards.
Absolutely.
And of course,
And it never stops either. This is where people be like, okay, I'm going to get this done and I'm going to kick this out. I got 1 month, 6 weeks. I'm going to work on this. No, first of all, get that out of your head. Healing never stops. Not ever. We are healing till the day we die. So boom, took the pressure right off right there. It never ends. So stop trying to get to the end, right?
exactly.
Like it can go with the rhythm of the healing. But sorry, I interrupted you.
Now, I was curious to hear your thoughts on healing and what you were talking about in the book. And of course, the healing is something, it cannot be compared, I guess. Everybody's
No,
healing path is very different.
of course.
All
And
I'm
yet there are
trying.
things we can do to help us along, right? There
Correct.
are. Healing goes faster when we have a teacher to show us the way, right? But then we still have to try things and see what works for us. For me, healing meant letting go of the things that no longer served me, letting go of the things that were holding me back, resentment, pain, lack mentality, deconstructing the programming that I was taught from religion, parents, society, country, you name it, school, okay, all this programming, deconstructing all that programming, removing the stuff that isn't serving me at all, and then putting in my new programs. I look at my body almost like it's a computer. I removed all the little chips of all the things that are no good for me. Don't need those. Crush them under my heel. Acknowledge them. Take the lessons I learned from them. Get rid of them. Now I'm reprogramming myself with the things that I want to be, that I believe about myself, that I am successful. And I think that's what healing is. First, it's a deconstruction, and then it is a building up of who you want to be and who empowers you, not what society tells you have to be, because that's bullshit. Sorry for the language. You can edit that if you need
No,
to.
I like an organic conversation, how it goes. And you see, this is what I was trying to tell you earlier, that I do not script my interviews. I let it unfold. We pick the cues and we work on that, and we go to the next one. And I really love all the topics that you have covered in your book. And this is something I usually ask to my guests in the beginning of the discussion. But now we are nearing the end and we have talked about everything. So, in this theme, this idea that I told you, that fail with me, we talk about failures, open up about failures. It might be messy, it might be difficult, might be hard conversations, but how does that idea sit with you, fail with me, talking about failures and then come out of it? I usually ask
Yeah,
this at the
sure.
beginning. I'm curious about, now that we have spoken for close to an hour, how do you think about it?
Oh, gosh. I have failed at so many things, but I think the only thing that makes us truly fail is when we don't get back up, right? That's when we stay down, then you failed. If you get back up after every failure, not a failure. I love when I'm watching a podcast or listening to something on YouTube or just wherever I just so happen to be, when a teacher says that day, Today, I want to talk about how I failed this week. Because sometimes we look at our teachers and we go, gosh, I'll never be that. They're always spot on. They're always switched on. They're always positive. I love it when they show up and go, I'm having a bad day and I want you to know it because I'm real. And then I go, oh, that makes me feel so much better. So this actually also happened. I'll bring you really back to the same story of my editor when I sent the workbook into her and she sent it back and she said, Tina, I need to talk to you about the section about forgiveness. You took a hard stance on it. And although I agree with you, we don't want your readers to walk out the door, slam the book shut and say, you don't know me, right? So that's where that came from, that little story. You don't know me. And she just always has these perfect examples. So she said, I need you to really just soften the way you're delivering what you're saying. Say the same thing, but it needs just double what you're saying and just bring it in more. So I went, okay, I'll do that. And then something happened. I got to tell you. So I'm talking about forgiveness and how we need to forgive in order to move forward, because I do firmly believe that not forgiving is poison in our body. But all of a sudden, I started having nightmares. I don't dream often, only when spirit's revealing childhood to me, apparently. So when I wrote the first book, I had childhood revealed to me in pieces, but everything from 10 years old and over, nothing younger. So this time, I'm remembering stuff from when I'm 2, 3 years old. And I'm going, God, am I making this stuff in my head? Because I can't even ask anybody. My sisters don't remember, and I certainly can't ask my mother. She's a liar, and my father's not with us anymore. So I'm like, gosh, I can't even ask anybody. And am I making stuff up, or is this real? And here I was typing that people needed to forgive, but when those memories came, it was one thing remembering the harsh things they did to a 10, 12, 13-year-old. It was another story seeing what they did to me as a 2-year-old. And I thought, how can anyone ever treat a small child like that? How am I ever going to forgive this? And there I was writing about forgiveness, and Spirit went, no, I need to teach you a lesson here. Also, let's work on your own healing, but healing isn't so easy for other people. Maybe you found it easy to heal the first time because you were ready, but not everyone is there. And so it was a lesson I had to go and learn again. All over again was forgiveness. Now, did I forgive her right away, or him? My parents? No, I did not. I sat with that for weeks. In fact, it derailed the entire release date of my book. That is how much I went into that. Instead of releasing my book in June, I released it last week in September or October it was even. So, I mean, it really derailed me, but it was a lesson I needed to learn. Do I think of it as a failure? No, I don't, because I got back up and I needed to learn that lesson. Also, so that I can have more empathy for people who are struggling with forgiveness. So I don't know if that was exactly where you were going with that, but that is something that happened to me, recently that made me go back and reevaluate.
No, thank you for sharing that. Why I asked this question is because I put this episode in, I told you that we have 2 different sections. We'll put it in the writer sections, put it in the fail with me section. And does the idea that, I'm talking about it is and everybody approaches it in different ways, failure. And I was curious as to how you see it and whether it connects with you.
I guess the failure in that for me was that I didn't finish the book. I didn't get out time. I didn't meet my deadlines. And then I couldn't even go back to it for another 3-4 months because I have a full-time job that is seasonal and I was starting my other job. So I felt that I'd failed the book. And yet when I then spoke to my teacher, my guru, if you will, months later, she said to me, no, Tina, the book was never meant to come out in June because it's about going inward and healing. So what felt like a failure to you was actually just divine timing, because Spirit wants your book to come out in September anyways, because here in North America, we're now going into winter. That's when people go indoors and they work on things like healing. summertime is a time to go outside and play. So you see everything happened exactly the way it should. I learned a valuable lesson, and what was meant to be was meant to be. So not a
That
failure in the end.
that is beautiful. That is beautiful. I think we have covered about the areas that we had in mind. And I wish your book all the success. And you are such a great speaker. I love talking to you. Is there anything else you would like to share with our audience?
Thank you for saying that. My only message is that we're never too old or too far gone to heal. And even though healing is messy work and it's all encompassing, I cannot stress enough how peaceful it is to feel grounded and to not be controlled by my triggers anymore. I'm not triggered anymore. I'm so rarely am I ever triggered. And when I am, I know how to deal with it, which means I'm no longer living in fight or flight mode. I live with peace. And I wrote my book, and both books, my only intent was to share that feeling of just divine love with others, because if you've never had it, it's hard to know what it feels like, but it's attainable and you are worth it. And nobody will ever do the healing for you. So only you can decide, but you are worth it. So do it. What are you waiting for? You can feel peace. It is not out of your reach.
That is a beautiful message to conclude this on. And thank you for sharing all your wonderful stories about your book with us. I wish the book all the success. And anyone listening to this, please leave a good review wherever you are listening on. Whether if you like the channel on YouTube, do subscribe. Thank you. Thank you for joining me today, Tina.
Thank you very much for having me. It was an absolute pleasure.